Dai, dai, dai.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night,
Everyone.
wherever you are.
I'm super excited for the new episode of today because the topic it's something that at some point every designers should take care of.
I would say it's something that every designer should take into consideration right away, not at some point. Today we're going to talk about design for belonging and what that means. What do you think it means?
At the beginning I was thinking about inclusive design, but approaching the concept of belonging goes further inclusion. That's why we want to focus on that. That's why we need to understand more that every design decision has the potential to include or exclude people in a way that is more intense than just inclusion design, because it merges the inclusion with the diversity and the equity.
Totally. I think that's the right description. Belonging is the sweet spot, the intersection between equity, inclusion, and diversity. Inclusive design is such a buzzword. Everyone is about designing for inclusion, diversity and inclusion, especially in the US, but I would say in the world right now, and all the inequality has been a trending topic. So we want to be very cautious when you touch on that, because there are so many aspects that are so personal to everyone. But it's important that we bring out, and we wanted to discuss it, because as I said, it's not something that you can add and you should add to your portfolio. It's not something that you can sprinkle on your presentation, right? Let me add a little bit more of inclusion. No, you have to think about it.
It's not a plugin that you can install on Figma or something like, okay, now it's the time to fix it. Bring some inclusion in.
Yeah,
it's not that.
The definition of belonging, as my former colleague Rebecca Dougal used to call it, is that moment when you feel you're okay to bring your own self and you're comfortable in bringing your own self to work. You feel accepted and you're part of the company that you work for, because it really embodies your thoughts and your mission and your vision, and it's kind of an ecosystem. And I think it's a very powerful way to describe what belonging means and why it's a combination of inclusion, diversity, and equity.
The accessibility disability, sorry for the game word, it's something very complex, because in the moment that you are using a color, you are excluding some people that they're red, that kind of red, that they cannot say in that. During my website development, the stuff with Notion, you know that I've changed it like every single week. Something that never changed for me in my website is the accessibility widget, because my mission is to give the opportunity to everyone to see what I'm saying. That's for me the user diversity in real life.
Well, to me, I love and I upload that, and one of the reasons why designing for belonging is so important to me is that I am a person with disabilities, for example. Like, as you might have noticed, I'm wearing the AirPod on only one side because I'm half deaf. And I can tell you that when I take this AirPod off, nobody will be able to know that. So some of the disabilities that people have are not perceivable on the physical sense, right? If you're not on a wheelchair, it's not like that. And they're all not at the same level, right? Of course, color blindness is different to be blind. So there are different levels. But the point is, just because I might have a mild disability, that doesn't mean that my experience is going to be the same. So think about that. I don't experience stereo, and I will never experience stereo in my life. So whenever I buy a subwoofer or whatever, any TV home entertainment system, then I can enjoy that, right, for the rest of my life. But it's crazy because I don't believe people that do that kind of system think about people that are half deaf. And you'll be surprised by how many half deaf people are out there. Apart from like my personal example that I wanted to share with everyone, that's the reason why I believe that designing for belonging is something that should go, as you said, Raffaele, beyond the physical level, because there is a connection on the skill set level, on the physical level, but it's all about this sense of belonging. So make sure that whenever you go somewhere, everyone can consume that, enjoy that. Doesn't matter what kind of user he or she is,
without being excluded, because it's not just about our message that is not going to be delivered to everyone, but how a person with a disability feels.
There is this very interesting pyramid that the University of Cambridge created, and I believe I posted in this article I did in March about designing for inclusive personas. That was very eye-opening to me, because what they're saying is you don't just need to include all the people with no difficulties in your personas, but you should make sure that you put in there people with mild difficulties, people with minimal difficulties, and people with severe difficulties. And that should be your target audience. So if you go and look at this pyramid, it's very eye-opening, because you're like, oh, you probably haven't never done something like that. You have like maybe your core target that is what? Normal people, how would you call it so? And yeah, maybe you can include other people, some people with difficulties, but you usually don't do that way. So that was very eye-opening as in terms of an approach to make sure that everyone was part of your design.
I'm actually thinking about the project that I made in Lisbon that is called FlatLX, which is an app that basically helps people to avoid to climb without knowing that. And you are just let me think about the persona that I didn't develop, which is the old man who has a disability. That is still my next step. I was still super interested in understand the point of view of people with disabilities, not because it's trendy, but because it's part of my mission. So if you have a product, please think about your vision and how this vision impacts with everyone.
There is actually something that we can all use and leverage. As of today, there are a number of different inclusive design toolkits out there. I personally loved the one that Microsoft developed a few years ago. And the reason why I love that is because it pretty much covers 3 different scenarios in which you can identify those difficulties. And those 3 scenarios are all about being someone with a permanent difficulty. Imagine like you're like blind. Can be someone who has a temporary. Imagine again you've like just broken your arm, or something that can be a situational. Going back to work can happen that you just lost a dear one. The interesting part about it is that those different scenarios are also applied to the 5 senses. By looking at this table, you have an idea of like, oh, there are so many things that I have to consider when I craft an application, a service, a product that is kind of overwhelming. And it's difficult, it's tricky, but it definitely opens up your mind. And I will say, I will invite you even to try as an exercise, because it will spark your creativity. Because when you start thinking, for example, how would a blind person do that? Is that something that will apply to people that are Muslim, right? Or imagine someone has been going through a gender transition. How that apply to what I'm creating? Just ask those 3 questions whenever you're creating something. I think you'll get inspired.
I think it should be a very good exercise, because I'm kind of assuming that after that kind of exercise, your mind will never be the same. Your thinking will never be the same, whatever you are designing or whatever you're doing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know what? It's also has been very helpful for me is making sure then accessibility is not your goal. That is also important, because right now the standard of accessibility are really well defined, and having an accessible website should be almost like a table stake. Like the AA standard should be a table stake, but shouldn't be what you're aiming for. Again, accessibility is a part of being inclusive. Inclusive plus diversity plus equity brings you the belonging. So again, think big, don't stop at the accessibility level, but make sure that again, you don't only think of people with a physical disability. You think religion, you think colors of skin, like you think everything. It's a very inspiring process.
Let's say like that, it's not a checklist. It's not a homework. It's not something that you should take care because otherwise I would not get paid or my boss will scream out. It's something that you have to do. You have to deal with that. You shouldn't sleep if you are not accessible to everyone. I could not make an impact if I'm not thinking about people.
I totally believe that's the right approach. Unfortunately, because of the impact of like marketing and segmentation and everything that we have, that has been to some extent translated via persona into design, I believe that there is this aspect of being very functional when we think about personas and who are we designing for. So just to give you a practical advice, we go in with all the ages and the favorite tools and the place where you live, and everything is very functional.
Yeah. The job, your hobbies, your favorite books, and
and still you will argue that those elements go beyond just a number, because if you think they are behavioral in nature, and it's good, that's how a persona should be developed. But I would say that designing for belonging transcends those boundaries. So that's why it's different, and that's why it's difficult, but that is also why it's so inspiring. The final advice to everyone, I would say, as a human being, would be always, again, assume positive intent and let's work together. There's a ton of stuff about ethical design and everything that's been done, for example, even in technology like responsible AI, that is still brand new. So hopefully that will be sensational for our future and we all get better. Positive message for today. I like a positive message. Awesome.
Yes.
Let us know what you guys think. This is a really important theme for us. So yeah, please.
If someone who's listening has ever take consideration on ethical or accessible or inclusive design, please let's comment. Let's try to have a conversation on that, because it's super interesting.
Bye guys.
Yeah.
Ciao Rafa.
Ciao Fede.
Bye.
See you next time.